over time, you're running your business, and the goal, of course, is to grow it. Even if you're someone who's by yourself, the goal is for you to be able to grow your company. And oftentimes, we can only do so much as one person. And as the business begins to grow, you'll find that you're maybe working more hours, you're feeling stressed, those types of things. And as you begin to feel those things, then it's time to stop and then think, okay, maybe I need some help here. So that's a couple of the triggers to know that you need some help. And then the benefits of those getting the help is going to be that, it prevents you from getting burnout.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hey there, and welcome back to the Black to Business Podcast. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall, and today we are diving into a topic that's going to be a game changer for your business. We're talking about all things delegation and letting go. Now, we all know that as entrepreneurs, our to-do list can feel like a never-ending saga. But what if I told you that there's a way to reclaim your time and streamline your workflow? That's exactly what we're exploring today. Today's episode is all about the power of delegation and how it can transform your business and your bottom line. We've got an incredible guest with us today who is an expert in the art of strategic delegation. Tonya Thomas is the founder of Team Delegate, which is a virtual assistant company that has been revolutionizing the way entrepreneurs tackle their workload since 2001. With over 20 years of experience, she's here to guide us through every step of the delegation journey. We're going to dive into strategies to overcome the fear of delegation, aligning it with your business goals, and identifying tasks suitable for delegation. We'll also dive into building trust, setting clear expectations, and learning from delegation challenges, because it's not always easy. Tonya's also going to guide us through creating a strategic delegation plan, ensuring effective communication, and measuring the success of your delegation efforts. So this is an action-packed episode, so let's dive in. Tonya, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. Such a treat to have you on the show, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So on the Black to Business Podcast, before we dive into the topic, we always like to get our audience familiar with who we're speaking to. So if you could just share a little bit about who you are, what is it that you do in your business, and how did you get where you are today?
Sure. As you know, I'm Tonya Thomas. I am the founder and CEO of Team Delegate. It is a virtual executive assistant company. I have been in the virtual assistant industry since 2001. So I guess now, a little over 20 years. Wow. I started out as a solo business owner, being a solo virtual assistant initially. And then I guess around 2019, I decided to scale it. Mm-hmm. So now I've developed an agency. And so that's a bit about myself.
I love it. And the wonderful thing, when I was looking over your business and your profile, I love about the work that you are doing is that you have a passion for helping business owners understand how effective delegation can have a positive impact on their bottom line. And I'm so excited to talk to you about this today because as entrepreneurs in general, sometimes we struggle with how to delegate or what we should delegate and the benefits of delegating and not doing it ourselves. So I'm so glad today we're going to talk about delegate to elevate and how to empower your business through strategic delegation. Yeah, so on the Black to Business Podcast, we like to break it down. So let's start with the basics and first understanding delegation. So what would you say in simple terms delegation is and how you would define it for our audience?
Sure. Yeah, I think delegation is releasing work in this case, because we're generally talking about business owners, releasing work that you have in your business, tasks, projects to others so that you are able to focus your time and attention on areas in the business that you enjoy doing the most or that is your primary source of business that only you can handle, but you want to delegate the things, typically administrative things that you don't necessarily have to personally touch, to other people, so that, you have more time to be able to think of strategy in your business. Like I said, work on other areas that is your zone of genius, so that you can elevate and grow your business.
Yes. Thank you so much for breaking that down. And so you've been doing this, as you mentioned, virtual assistant since 2001. So you are a vet in the game. And in your experience, why would you say it's important, especially for entrepreneurs? Because we have a lot of people who are just starting out, and why it's important for them to learn how to delegate, especially in those early years or when they're just starting out.
Delegation is key. And I know sometimes people can make it sound as though it's easy to do, but a lot of people struggle with it. And it's not just, giving people tasks, here you do this, you do that. There's a strategy and process to it as well. Yeah. So oftentimes, if you don't understand and know that, you may struggle with delegation and it may not be successful for you. So, when you think about releasing something to someone, there's different variations that go into that. Number one, does the person have the skill set needed to be able to do it? If they have the skill set needed to be able to do it, the next thing is, okay, how am I going to give this to this person? What is going to be the process for that? Do I already have, a written procedural process for how this is done? If not, then am I just going to be able to verbally explain to the person how I want this done? And then, is a person the type of person also who is able to, receive that, but then are they also someone who can initially, as things go along, be able to improve upon the way this is done? So there's just different ways. And then the other thing is, how are we going to, communicate as this person is doing this work? Because you also don't want to delegate and forget. You don't want to abdicate either. So as you can tell, there's a lot of, things that go into delegation.
Yes. Yeah. So for everybody who is listening today, you are going to walk away with a real understanding of what delegation is and how, you're going to hear this a lot of times because we really want to drill it down. So Tonya, like you kind of mentioned, people kind of think delegation is like just giving away tasks. And there are so many other common misconceptions about delegation. So what are some of those things that you hear often when it comes to those misconceptions? Because somebody is listening and they're like, I don't want to delegate because I think it's this. So we want to kind of like debunk some of those myths.
Sure. Like I mentioned earlier, people think, I can just give somebody this task, but one of the myths is too that you'll be able to trust people to do it. That's one thing that people have an issue with a lot of times, is having the ability to be able to trust that somebody else is going to be able to do the work to their satisfaction and to their standards. Something else, if you're a micromanager, as a result of the trust, then you may want to kind of hover over the person or not totally release all of the tasks. And sometimes I like to give examples. So, for example, say you want someone to manage your calendar for you. However, you don't want to release, giving them full access to your calendar. So they may have to check in with you to get your availability to give to somebody else. Okay, that's counterproductive, and you're not really releasing that task. So if that's something that you're dealing with, you need to look, within yourself to say, okay, is this really helping me? Am I not really being productive because I haven't totally released it? So that's another thing there. And then something else sometimes that people go through is they're afraid that the person may be better at the task or project than them. And so it's kind of like this control thing. I don't want to release it because what if they do a better job than me? And then just from an internal standpoint, that's just going to make you feel some type of way. So you don't want to really totally release the task. And so a lot of those things can go into delegation that people don't quite think about, because all of us may have a little variation of all of those things within us. So then we're not delegating effectively as a result.
Yes. Oh, that is so good. I want to stay right there because let's talk about that resistance. And I know people who are listening, and, personally, I've dealt with this as well, is building that trust, as you mentioned, because trust is crucial. So for somebody who's listening, what strategies do you suggest for building that trust with team members or those that they delegate to?
Sure. Yes. One thing I would say is, first, looking internally to determine, why am I feeling this way? Is it because I've, dealt with someone in the past and they messed things up? So is that why I'm not, trusting right now? So I think that's where it starts, because you can't really move past it until you understand why you're feeling that way. Then one thing, you can also do is, start small. What task can I give that maybe isn't client facing and it's internal? So if there is a mishap, then, no, it's just done behind the scenes and I can, we can kind of work it out, on the back end, as opposed to something that's client facing that could, be detrimental to the business. So it may be more helpful for you to kind of start that way to build that trust over time.
That is so good. Great advice. And another thing that you mentioned is this thing with control. So especially as small business owners and entrepreneurs who are just starting out, especially, it's like you're close to your baby. So I struggle with giving up control. That's what they might say. So what are some of those ways that people can feel like they can maintain that control while also effectively delegating? So they kind of have like a control over the overall, I guess, vision, but to maintain that while effectively delegating?
I would say communication, because that's going to help you stay in the loop. So then that way you do feel like you're still involved. So that way, it's helpful for you. So making sure then that you set up maybe checkpoints or whatever, and as the task or project is going along, and that way you don't feel as, I guess, disconnected from it, as if you've just given it to someone and then you don't have any other dealings with it, because that's really not how delegation should be done. And so as long as you're still in communication with the person, you're talking about the task or project as it's going along, then you still can feel involved and as if you have a part in it and you have an understanding of, what's being done, when it's being done, all of that, just by talking with the person and staying in the loop.
Got it. So you've given us some tips on how to build that trust and also how do we balance control when it comes to delegation. Now I want to dive into some more benefits of effective delegation, because people understand this now. Now let's talk about, okay, now you know what to do, the benefits of it. So how does strategic delegation contribute to the overall business growth, you would say?
It's huge, because over time, you're running your business and the goal, of course, is to grow it. Even if you're someone who's by yourself, the goal is for you to be able to grow your company. And oftentimes, we can only do so much as one person. And as the business begins to grow, you'll find that you're maybe working more hours, you're feeling stressed, those types of things. And as you begin to feel those things, then it's time to stop and then think, okay, maybe I need some help here. So that's a couple of the triggers to know that you need some help. And then the benefits of those getting the help is going to be that, it prevents you from getting burnout, because that can happen in our businesses. if we're working 7 days a week, what have you. So that's one of the large benefits of it, because you're able to have someone else help you so that you're not working around the clock. So then if you have a family, you're able to spend more time with your family, those types of things. That's going to be the benefit of successful delegation.
I love that. Well, the beautiful thing is that you and your business, Team Delegate, actually helps entrepreneurs with this. So I want to talk about some of the insights that you have on how outsourcing or virtual assistants align with this effective delegation for those who are beginning. So if it's, they seek to hire staff full time, or they seek to, start with a virtual assistants, like what are some insights that you have there?
Sure. So if you are, looking to work with a virtual assistant, the first thing is, you want to determine, what does that look like for you? I know there's differences because, as I mentioned myself, I was a solo person in the beginning, but now, I have an agency. So you have that option, do you want to work with a solo person? Do you want to work with the agency? I will say the difference is like, the agency, the benefit there, I guess you could say too, is that you have, someone who's doing the work for you up front. Because the biggest thing is you've got to find someone, and a lot goes into that. So you could either, if you don't have someone that you can ask for a referral, then you've got to determine what that looks like for you for the person that you're going to bring on to help you. Where with an agency, they do that upfront work, and so all of that's done. But that's one of the things you would have to do. And then once you've identified the person that you want to help you in the business, then it just looks like, you putting everything into place to be able to work with the person from a successful standpoint. Yes. And so oftentimes, though, small business owners in the beginning may not be ready for a full-time person. And that's one of the other benefits of virtual assistants, because they're typically contractors. So you don't have the added expense either of, benefits and employment taxes and things of that nature, where you can work with a virtual assistant for, a few hours a month. And that's beneficial for a lot of small business owners because they don't, need anybody full time out of the gate most times. And so that's going to be helpful for you with that flexibility.
That is such a good point. Yes, because I think it could become overwhelming for somebody, especially when they're listening. They're like, okay, I got to hire this person, thinking about the budget, or if I have to find tasks for this person to do, and I don't know if I need them that long. So I'm so glad that you said that, they might not be ready to start full time. Right.
And something else that you touched upon in there too is people not really knowing what to give.
Yes.
Because I encounter that a lot with people. They're like, okay, I know I need help, but I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to give the person or anything like that. And so the best thing to do in that situation is to keep track of what you're doing. For maybe a week or two, keeping a notepad handy or whatever, jotting down the things that you're doing. If you can't think off the top of your head, some of the things that you can give to somebody. And so just jotting those things down. And then once you have your list, you can kind of go from there, whether, this is do it or delegate it type thing, to help give you some sort of idea of the task that you could get help with.
Love it. Oh, so that's great. That I want to stick there for a little bit, because one of the things you said is I love that idea of tracking for about 2 weeks. So what are some of the things that you think are tasks that people don't think that they should delegate, but they should, or some of those things that maybe you should hold on to for a little while longer?
What I've found in, working with people over the years, the big thing for a lot of people is their schedule. That's usually the main thing. And that's one thing that I would say all of our clients have in common. They all want help with that.
Yeah.
So helping manage their calendars because they are service-based businesses, so they do a lot of meetings, and that's helpful. Another one is, inbox management because we get a lot of email. A lot of people, you get a lot of email, and so it gets hard to weed through what's important and what's
Yes.
not. So that's a big one there. Those two things I would say are two that you can possibly, start with. And I think your other question was what should be something that you should hang on to initially. I don't know. That one's a tough one because what I often always say is, if it's something that only you can do, then definitely that's something that you need to hang on to. And then I did mention earlier, if you're a little reluctant to delegation, if it's something that's client facing, then maybe you want to hang on to those things initially until you get comfortable.
Great advice. And Tonya, would you say that there's a perfect time to considering hiring out and delegating?
I can't think of a perfect timing because everybody's different.
Yes.
So, yeah, I would just say, you're just going to have to be cognizant of it because you don't want to get too far out and then you're just in desperation mode, if that makes sense. So, you don't want to get to the point where, you're at a point where I just got to have somebody today, or within the next 2 days because it's gotten so bad, I just can't take. So you don't want to get to that point because then you're probably not going to make a sound decision in who you choose. At that point, you may just be looking for a warm body. So you want to make sure from a timing standpoint is that you just kind of keep an eye on it. Like I said earlier, if you feel like, you're working more hours a week than you want to. So keeping a track on how much time you're spending in your business, looking at that on a monthly basis or something. So as you can see, as you're getting to a point where have your goal, I would say, if you say, okay, I only want to work, 30 hours a week or 40 hours a week. And when I get to 40 hours a week, then I know it's time for me to start looking at somebody. So being proactive about it versus reactive.
Got it. Okay. So one of the things we've been speaking about also is relinquishing control and also building trust. And another thing that is a part of that I think is important to talk about when we talk about outsourcing and delegating is this idea of emotional attachment to certain tasks. So we often develop these emotional attachments. So what are some strategies that you recommend for those in overcoming those emotional attachments to tasks? Because I can say, for example, in the beginning, when I produced the podcast, I did everything from beginning to end. And one of those tasks that I was a little reluctant to let go was editing because I felt like it was so personal and nobody could really do it like I wanted. And so I had built this emotional attachment to it. So I'm pretty sure there are some other examples, but what do you say to somebody to overcome those emotional attachments?
How successful do you want your business to be? That's one area that you have to focus on. And that if you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons, because it's like, if I hang on to this, what's going to be the outcome?
Right.
What will be the outcome if I do delegate it? So keeping note of that and thinking about it that way is going to help you be able to move past it, because it's either you stay where you are or you want to grow and expand. And so if you have something that you're kind of reluctant to, that's one way from a mindset to be able to view it to try and get past that.
Yes. And I think one of the things you also mentioned earlier is it allows you to step into those different roles that you need to be in. So more so like that visionary role, like that requires vision, creativity, mental power. So I think we don't understand the capacity when it comes to mental exhaustion. So maybe minimizing the tasks that you're focusing on. And that's one of the things I had to realize is, I loved editing, but when I wasn't editing, I could think more creatively on something else.
Exactly, because we all need that strategy time, focus time. If you want, your business to grow, and I think I mentioned it earlier, because if you're always stuck in the weeds and working in the business, as I'm sure you've heard people say, then you don't have time to work on it. And that's going to be able to give successful delegation is going to be able to open the door for you to have time to be able to do that. Because even if you have somebody, helping you say 10 hours a week, then you got that 10 hours back that you can do something else with, but just making sure that you're using it strategically, that 10 hours a week that you have a plan for how you're going to utilize it.
Yes. Well said. And Tonya, one of the things we spoke about earlier is the communication. That's a big part of it. So we've gotten through the tips and tricks on how to overcome those emotional attachments, relinquish control, and also build that trust. So somebody might say, okay, I'm ready, but as Tonya said, I got to make sure I communicate and set those clear expectations. So I want to talk about what that looks like when it comes to setting clear expectations. So how can entrepreneurs ensure effective communication to avoid misunderstanding?
Number one is thinking about it prior to. So before you have the conversation, make sure that you've jotted down bullet points that you want to cover so that you don't miss anything. Going in, so you go into the meeting or whatever prepared and you have your plan. And also having a way to receive and give feedback. So making sure that you have that as well. So I always tell people, try to have an agenda for your meetings and stuff. And so you can put on there, a way to be able to get feedback and all of that, because you want to be able to do that too. And the most important thing too, though, is making it a priority. I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners deal with. You feel like, okay, I don't have time, I'm busy, but you have to make those meetings a priority with your team, whether that, with your virtual assistant or anybody else, especially when you're working not only remotely, but I think anytime. Making that a priority, having that, on your calendar, because that's going to be huge. Making yourself available to the person in case they have questions or anything like that, or if there's anything that you still need to give them. So those are the things that go into, to me, successful communication.
Good stuff. And so when somebody is delegating or hiring out for tasks, of course, there will be challenges. It isn't always going to be smooth. So how can people learn to deal with those challenges and setbacks, especially when they're delegating something to someone and they make a mistake? What do you suggest? How do they deal with that?
Definitely confronting it, and giving people an opportunity through communication, to be able to explain maybe what happened. I think oftentimes, a lot of times, you maybe have been a little reluctant, and when something like that happens, we can shut down and, just want to throw in the towel. Yeah. But I would say, being open and ready to talk about it. Yes. And addressing it head on. And then usually what I say, because nobody's perfect. So, right. Your expectations can't be that, nothing like that will ever happen. The problem is if it's consistent. Now, that's another story. If they're consistent with it, then there's a problem. And you may need to look at, moving on. But I would say, prepare for something like that to happen, because typically it will, every now and then, because like I said, we all make mistakes every now and then. But yeah, I think just being open and willing to have the conversation about it.
That's good stuff. And one of the other questions I want to ask is about going back to earlier, we spoke about some people might not be ready to hire someone full time. So starting with a virtual assistant is a great start. So what do you say to those people whose concern might be, are they going to be able to cater to my business the way that I need them to, focus and hone in if they're not involved like full time? Or how do you ensure that that person is dedicated to that entrepreneur's business?
I think, yeah, because I know sometimes that's the challenge that people have too when they're working with a virtual assistant, because the expectation is that maybe they're going to just be sitting there waiting for you to give them something to do. But again, it comes down to communication, speaking with the person to know and understand, when they're working, how they're going to handle the task and the projects that you give them. And then make sure that both of you are on the same page as it relates to the turnaround time for the task and projects that you'll give them. So just open communication to discuss those things, I think, will be helpful in, the working relationship, given that it's not full time.
And what about those people whose concern might be, is the person going to be able to give that attention to detail and quality? Because for some people, it's you're managing multiple clients. Can you focus on my business the way that I need you to?
That one, I don't know, because on that one, I think it just boils down to the person. And so when you're first talking to them, because it goes down to that trust, as we talked about earlier. Is this person, do they have the skills to be able to do what it is that I need them to do? And that piece is the only way that you'll be able to assess that, whether or not they have the ability to be able to do what your requirement is of them. So that one's a bit tougher in terms of that, because there's just, you just have to have that clear understanding and trust to know that the person has the ability to be able to do what it is that you need them to do.
Right. Yes. Because I know people may have that objection. So I wanted to address that. Thank you. All right. So we have learned so much. Now I want to get into making this all a full circle with the strategy. So if you had to say a process of creating this strategic delegation plan, what advice or how would you guide our listeners through this plan from like, okay, you should start here and these are the things that you should have in place so that we can make this a full circle? Any frameworks or something?
No particular framework. I think just, I know we talked a lot in here about different things, but I think, just again, having a clear understanding of what your needs are, because you definitely have to know that before you can move forward. So having a clear understanding of maybe, what your needs are from the standpoint of what tasks do you need help with. And then also making sure that you have a clear way of how you're going to explain what you need done, and then having a way to be able to maintain the working relationship through the communication that we talked about. So I would say, knowing your needs, how are you going to, work with the person, and then having a clear communication.
Got it. All right. So we're in the technology era, and people should know that there are some technology tools that can help them streamline this process. So are there any recommended tools or some examples of some of those tools that have been effective for business owners who are starting out when it comes to technology, and especially for those considering virtual assistants?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, because there's a lot of things out there and it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, just it depends too on, what it is that you need done. I know I mentioned calendar management before. So if you're using Google or Outlook or anything like that for your calendar and email, and then, having a way that you can maybe keep on top of tasks. So maybe like a project management platform or something like that. But there's, various ones out there for that. And I would say that's probably something good, because that's a good way for you both to be able to keep abreast of what's being done and having everything in one spot.
Good stuff. All right. So people are like, okay, now I'm delegating these things. How do I make sure that it's working? So let's talk about measuring the success of this delegation. So how would you advise entrepreneurs who are listening to measure their delegation efforts? And what are some of those key performance indicators or metrics they should focus on?
I would say in order to, know that things are working well, like I had mentioned earlier, with knowing, I guess, the only way you can measure something is to have goals. And so, and then whether or not you've achieved those goals. So have your goals for what you would want out of the working relationship. And over time, within maybe the first 90 days or something like that, taking a look back at those goals to see if they've been attained. So that's one way to make sure that the relationship is working the way you want it to. And then the rapport, do you enjoy working with the person? That's always helpful too, because you have to be able to enjoy, who it is that you're engaging with. But those are a couple of ways to be able to assess the success of the relationship.
Good stuff. Tonya, this has been so valuable. You have given us so much advice and insights, and you really broke it down for us on understanding what delegation is and the best way to do it. So somebody's listening and they're like, okay, I need help, Tonya. At Team Delegate, let's talk about, for those who are interested in virtual assistant services and strategic delegation with your team, how can they connect with you? And what are some of those services that you offer?
Sure. We start with, like I've talked about on here, I think it starts with the delegation. So we do work with, you one-on-one to help you develop your delegation plan. We work with you on your goals and everything that you want to achieve so that we have all of those things. And then we help with the implementation by, of course, assigning you a virtual executive assistant to help you with the things that you want help with in your business. And so that's how we work with clients. And then ways to get in touch with us, our website, teamdelegate.com. And I am also on LinkedIn as well, just Tonya Thomas.
Love it. And Tonya, when they go to the website now, is this something that people can sign up and what's the startup process? Is it something that's more immediate? They start working with you all, or how is your onboarding?
Sure. It starts, of course, with a conversation to, see if we're a fit for one another. And then we get you onboarded, and usually, depending upon the person, because of course the onboarding, of course, there's things that you have to do, but typically we get up and running within a week.
Oh, that's good. That is good stuff. And one of the interesting things I saw about your team is that they are all US based.
Correct.
That is amazing. So yes, putting money back into our economy, creating jobs. Yeah. Love that. And so you have been doing this for some years. And what are some of those testimonials maybe you have, or can you share a testimonial of a recent success story of one of your clients?
Sure. We had a client that came to us. And so for him, it was his calendar, his email. It was him and maybe, I guess he had maybe a couple other employees working with him, but he didn't have an assistant. And so he came to us because he felt like, things were slipping through the cracks for him. He couldn't meet with people that he needed to meet with. There was emails. He just wasn't getting back to people in a timely fashion. So we, assigned him someone from our team to work with him. And then he could say, my assistant's copied on this email. She'll get you on my calendar. She developed a system to be able to alert him to high priority and mid-tier emails that he needed to respond to. And those things were huge for him. Yeah. His company grew. I think, now he may be up to 20 plus employees with even office managers. But he kept his virtual executive assistant through us because she was so instrumental in his growth. She went on to help him with other tasks. but those were his main pain points initially. But yeah, that was huge for him.
Yeah, that is huge. That's a big deal. Yeah, it's email because it might be a whole job in an email to complete something. So that's a big help. And for you as a leader of an organization and especially managing other people, how do you stay organized? Any of your favorite tools or resources that you can share with our audience that have been helpful for you in your journey?
Yes, I am a huge advocate of time blocking. That is helpful for me to stay on task because if I don't do that, the day kind of controls me instead of me controlling my day. So time blocking and task lists are helpful, very helpful for me.
That is good stuff. And Tonya, what advice would you give for someone who is in their first year of business?
Stay the course. I know, it can be tough. I always say entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart, and it is not, but you'll face obstacles and challenges, but just know that if you keep going, you are going to get there. You're going to reach your goals and you will be successful.
Love that. Such good advice. And now I want to hop into a quick round of not so serious business questions. So my first question is, if your business had a mascot, what animal or character would best represent it and why?
That's a good one. The first thing that came to mind, I guess, is a lioness because she goes out, she's the female lion is the one that goes out and does the hunting. And so that's what I would say would be for us because I know just strategically, going out, wanting to go out and help people be able to delegate because I'm passionate about that.
That's good. I love that. That's good. And if your business had a theme song that played every time you walked into the room, what song would that be and why?
I would say, what song comes to mind for me? And I've had it, and I apologize, it's not coming to mind, but yeah, that's a tough one. I had one in my head, but for some reason it's eluding me now.
Okay, so I got another question then. Which TV show do you wish still aired?
Oh, I watched so much stuff. I liked Living Single.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I was at my friend's recently and they were watching that. Yes, I got to get somebody Hulu's password to tune in though. That is a good choice. Okay, and finally, what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
It means to me to be Black in business is always putting my best foot forward, always, wanting to help other people as well, be able to be successful in their own right, and just keeping, helping where I can. Yes. From a diversity standpoint as well, that's important to me also. So that's what it means for me to be Black in business.
That's beautiful. Tonya, thank you so much for being on the Black to Business podcast and pouring into my audience, teaching us the ins and outs and basics of delegating and how to continue to grow our business. And thank you so much for the work that you are doing.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
That was so good. And I already know you learned a ton from this conversation because I certainly did. Okay, now let's dive into some of the key takeaways because there were so many. First, Tonya has over 20 years of experience in this virtual assistant business, and this speaks volumes about her expertise and her passion for this industry. Her insights into delegation goes beyond mere task management. It's about understanding what delegation truly is and how it can be a catalyst for your business growth. One of the powerful takeaways is the emphasis on working within your zone of genius. Tonya highlights the importance of focusing on what you do best while strategically delegating tasks that fall outside of that zone. And it's a recipe for efficiency and success. We also spoke about maintaining control of your vision while delegating, and it can be challenging, but Tonya provided us with some valuable insights into how it's not about relinquishing control entirely, but rather ensuring that every delegated task aligns seamlessly with your overarching goals. And the importance of communication. It is really the glue that holds the successful delegation together. Tonya stressed the vital role of clear and effective communication in the entire delegation process. It's not just about handing over tasks. It's about creating a collaborative and communicative workflow. And most importantly, building trust is a cornerstone for successful delegation. Tonya shared practical strategies for establishing trust with team members or delegated partners, a crucial factor in ensuring the smooth execution of tasks. And lastly, measuring the success of your delegation efforts is going to be key. Tonya left us with this invaluable insight into the metrics and indicators you should focus on to evaluate the impact of strategic delegation on your business. This was such a good episode. If you want to learn more about Tonya and connect with her, head over to our website at blacktobusiness.com/178. And there you'll find additional resources, links, and ways to stay in the loop with Tonya and Team Delegate. I'll see you back here next week for another episode, same time, same place. And until then, keep building and keep pushing the culture forward.